funny and all of this. But the other thing is he treated people like shit. So after my grandma died, no one visited him. And he was quite miserable. And then he just decided one day he didn't want to live anymore and let himself die when his stomach burst. Yeah. So you just got to understand, like when we don't do what we want to do in life, when we don't face the aspects that we need to face in terms of our growth, generally that's where we're going to end up. Old, miserable, bitter, and fucking, waiting to die. Pissed off at the world. All of this bullshit. So you just got to understand, like, if you want to go down that path, by all means go down that path. If you want different, all it takes is doing different. So if you normally feel like you want to avoid your emotions, then you have to go into your emotions. If you find yourself being too emotional, then you have to become less emotional. Like, you have to find the balance within you in everything. Because when you find the balance within you, you don't end up like my granddad as an egotistical narcissist who treated everyone like shit, talked down to people, made them feel like idiots, fucking assaulted them, like would just fucking hit you if you were doing anything. Like, you know what I mean? People didn't want to be around him. People thought he was a fucking idiot. Everyone in the towns thought he was a fucking idiot. But he thought he was King Dick shit. Do you sort of get it? So how he talked about himself and thought about himself was so high and mighty, and everyone else just saw him as the biggest wanker in town. Because he just used to talk shit. You know what I mean? And then if anyone said anything different to him, he just fucking argued them down and berated them. And just said they were a fucking idiot and they didn't know what they were talking about. Didn't matter. So, we can go that way if we want. Like, by all means, I had that choice to go that way. I decided not to go that way. Just because, it's not a very advised way to go, because you become blinded to other people's, like, interpretation or integration of how you communicate and the styles in which you communicate. So the problem with this is you think everyone enjoys being around you and everyone hates being around you. And you're just oblivious to it. You know what I mean? There's many people like this in the world. You know what I mean? They just think everyone loves them and because they're that great and amazing, and everyone around them just thinks they're the biggest fucking wanker in town. Do you sort of get it? And the reason is because they don't deal with the negative sides of it. So they just ignore all the negative aspects. So when people get upset with things that they say, no, it wasn't me, it was them. They couldn't take a joke, they couldn't do this, they couldn't do that. Like, they just project out responsibility to everyone else but themselves. Whereas if we inwardly take responsibility for everyone else and ourselves, so even if what we said wasn't wrong and someone else got upset with it, like, we take responsibility for that regardless because we said it. Do you know what I mean? So it's not that, like, we coddle that other person. Like, if I say, like, I don't know, I'm straight and I don't really get into gay shit and I'm not down with sucking dick and I think it's fucking weird, like, each to their own. If you get offended with that, that's okay. Like, like, I take responsibility that, yeah, it offended you, but I don't have to give a fuck. Do you know what I mean? So it's not that we coddle other people, but we take a bit responsibility for our actions and we look at ourselves and we say, is this an action that I like? Is this a good representation of who I am trying to be and who I am? Or is it not? And if it's not who you want to be, then we change it. If it's who you want to be and people in your environment are saying that who you want to be is wrong, well, potentially you're wrong. Or more than likely, your environment is wrong. Like, you don't align with those people anymore. Like, you got to let them go because they're projecting out their responsibility. they're saying who you are it makes them uncomfortable or isn't right. Do you sort of get it? Like, they want you to be like them, because who they are is right, who you are is wrong. Do you sort of understand? So like, they're projecting out that you have to comply with who I am, okay, to be able to make me feel comfortable and secure being around you. Do you sort of understand? So like, by all means, we can do that. We can change who we are to be around people, but like, nothing's going to happen, because in that relationship, that person's only ever going to project responsibility. They're never going to take responsibility or ownership. So it becomes a battle of who's right, who's wrong, who's in the right, who's in the wrong, who's got to apologise, who's done this, who's done that. Like, it's just nitpicking fighting. Do you sort of see? So it's sort of pointless to even worry about being around people like that. Do you sort of get it? It's just a marker. So, but the thing is if someone's saying like who you want to be in life isn't right, well, that's going to create negative emotions. And that's going to make you feel less than. So the key with that is being able to see it, and then being able to ask yourself and validate through yourself, is this true or is this not true? Is what this person say true? Like, are my behaviours, causing harm to other people? This, that and the other. Are my behaviours unacceptable in social interactions? And you assess and you say it's yes or no. Like, maybe I went over the top and I was a bit, like in the social setting, I went a bit too far and my behaviour was in the wrong. I can see that. Or maybe my behaviour was in the right, like I behaved correctly and all of that, and they chose to be hypersensitive to that or to take offence to that. Because you just got to understand, taking offence, okay, it's not like taking a gate, you know what I mean? Like, to take offence, like, you've got to consciously do that. Like, do you sort of get it? Like, it's not an instant response of, oh, that's offensive. It takes a couple of seconds, because you've got to register and say, no, I don't like that, that's offensive. Do you sort of get it? Whereas when you take the gate, it's just instant. You know what I mean? So that's an important thing to understand, is that, like, people are choosing to be offended by what you say. It's not that what you say is offensive. If you say something with the intention to offend someone, or the intention to hurt or put someone down, that's completely different. But if you're just talking in general terminology, in general terms, in general conversation, like, if you say, I don't like dogs, I like cats, for example, you know what I mean, and someone gets offended by that, like, it's sort of like, yeah, you can be offended, but like, I haven't offended you. Like, you've offended yourself. So that's an important thing to understand, is just understanding that onus of responsibility of, well, yeah, I could see how this could potentially be offensive, but it's sort of like, it wasn't said in any manner of offence, it wasn't said with the intention of offence. So if that person got offended, well, that's sort of on them, because it's their own problem, because they're choosing to offend themselves. And that's what we do a lot with emotions and trauma. So with emotions and trauma, we choose to have negative emotions. We choose to make those negative emotions more. Like, we're choosing to feel negative about situations, when in truth, the situation is the situation, and we get the choice to see the negative or see the positive. Like, it doesn't really change the situation, it just changes how we feel about the situation. So we can feel like the situation's a loss and it's negative, or we can feel like the situation's a gain and it's positive. Like, it doesn't really change the situation. What's happened. It's sort of like, we just get the ability now to be able to sort of feel good about it, to feel like we're gaining something from it, to focus on how much better we are now than we were before. Like, that's all it is. So when we understand these principles, in terms of, I am the one that is putting in the measure or the scale to which the emotion or the trauma affects me and how I feel about it. And it's like I can give that control to the other person and say they make me feel like this, or I can take the control and say I'm making me feel like this. Now I have the ability to lower it or to increase it if I want. So for example, when we get like, you know, over analysis or start overthinking, you know, and start, you know, like let's say someone makes you feel suspicious and you start overthinking you analyze movements, behavior, things like that, and you're over-analyzing. It's sort of like, well, if we're focusing on over-analyzing the negative attributes of, you know, distance, things like that, like, you know, behavioral patterns, things like that, like past experiences and all of that, well, now I'm going to be looking for it, so I'm going to start identifying it easier. But it doesn't mean that it's true. I've identified the behavioral pattern, you know what I mean? And there could be a high likelihood of it being accurate and true. There might not. It depends to the scale and the depth of, you know, our analysis. But do you sort of get what I'm saying? If we see the negative, okay, we can create negative events that didn't actually exist, but we create them because we are looking to align, you know, data, but we're not looking to get 100% proof. We're looking to get 40% proof, 20% proof, 30% proof. So if 30% of the dots line up, I've got the picture. Do you sort of get it? I don't really have the picture. It could be different. You know, in most cases, usually, if I've got 30% of the picture, I've got the picture, but it's sort of like, you know, I can give into that in terms of that can be my way of processing and dealing and thinking and decision making, of where I sort of just look for what I don't want, and then once I start seeing dots and I start connecting dots, no, I'm out. Or what we can do is we can do the exact same with the fucking positive, where I look for the good aspects and attributes of that person. If I get 30% of the picture, I've got the picture. You know what I mean? Like, the picture doesn't really matter if we're drawing a horse or a zebra. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't really matter. It's sort of like, but if it's close enough, we're pretty good. Do you sort of know what I mean? Whereas when we think about the negative aspects of it, it's sort of like, as soon as I see one thing, that's a red flag and I'm out. Do you sort of know what I mean? So we can create these artificial red flags, or we can also, on the other end, create artificial green flags, where we make excuses for other people's behavior and justify away other people's behavior. You know, he really cares about me, he just doesn't like to show it. He you know, he doesn't like to express it. Yeah, that's fucking bullshit, because I can bet ya when he gets a mistress, oh mate, he'll be fucking expressing it all he fucking wants. People act the exact same. So go look at people in love, and then look at how you and your partner treat each other. And if you say you're in love and you're not treating yourself like how other people who are actually in love treat each other, you know that you're telling yourself bullshit lies. Do you sort of get it? Like the behavior's fucking common. Like, the patterns are the same. If someone's in love with you, they'll give you attention, they'll put in effort, you know, they'll be collaborative, they'll be willing, you know, all of these things. You know what I mean? So it's sort of like, if they're distant, if they're, you know, avoidant, all these different things, right? And I'm trying to justify that it's love, for example, you know, it's sort of like I can do that, and I can create these artificial green lights and justify away their behavior of, it's like, it's because of this, it's because of that, it's because of this. Just to the same when we're justifying the negative behavior, like, I can make shit up to myself. I don't know the truth. I'm not talking to them. I'm not clarifying about it. So like, that's the big problem with these green flags when we create these artificial ones, okay? And it's just, if you find yourself making an excuse for someone else's behavior, be it negative behavior or be it positive behavior, okay? If you find yourself making an excuse for someone else, that's you convincing yourself of a narrative. So you're creating a narrative and then reinforcing that narrative. Do you sort of get it? So like, you've just got to see behavior for what behavior is, and then it's just about clear communication. So to the same, when we're dealing and facing our emotions, okay, like, it's just that honest conversation. Do you sort of get it? We're not saying all the bullshit stories to ourselves and trying to make ourselves feel better and coddling ourselves while we're at rock bottom. We're sort of seeing ourselves without any glasses on, seeing ourselves for what we are, how we are, you know, as an imperfect person. Because the thing is when I accept that I'm imperfect and I'm not a fucking perfect person, I give myself the fucking grace to fucking be human and to make mistakes. Like, it doesn't really matter. When I go around acting like I'm this almighty fucking perfect deity, well then any mistake I fucking make makes me look like the dirtiest piece of shit. Do you sort of get it? So like, I can go through life putting all this bullshit stress and strain on myself, trying to act like I'm so much better than other people, like most people do. False virtue is a true thing. You know, those people that act like they're good people and they do this and they do that, they're a good person because they go to church, not because they treat people well. You know what I mean? But like, that's the thing, we can be one of those people if we want and act that way if we want, but it's not true. Like, it's all just bullshit and illusions. Do you sort of get it? So like, the important thing is we have to see ourselves for who we are and accept ourselves for who we are, and then identify what we want in life in terms of, you know, let's say we identify, I'm not a strong person, I'm a weak person, but I want to be a strong person. So it's now in every moment I've identified that I am the weak person. So the only option is to alter the behavior and change the behavior. Do you sort of understand? So it's very important that we understand this, because this is the process to altering and changing it, okay? When we're able to do this in terms of we're able to accept ourselves and accept the negative aspects of ourselves and accept the negative behavioural patterns, and then what we're able to do is we're able to then go and create new positive patterns or positive behavioural traits, and we enforce them and influence them, or enforce them. Okay, what we're going to do is now this becomes the reality. Do you sort of get it? So I'm no longer building up these negative aspects about myself. I'm building up the positive aspects of myself. When I go around talking shit that, you know, I'm this perfect person and I don't make mistakes and I'm, you know, impeccable and all this bullshit, like, I'm building up this false like self. It's not real. Do you sort of get it? So like, I'm not looking at the weak aspects of myself, I'm hiding them away because they show the falseness of my claim. Do you sort of get it? So like, the people who build up these false aspects of themselves, or don't accept that they're fallible, that they're not perfect, like my granddad, he thought he was King Dick perfect. You know what I mean? He didn't have bad things. He didn't have anger problems. No. He didn't have respect problems. He treated everyone fairly, equally. You know, he treated everyone like shit. Like, it didn't matter who you were. You know what I mean? So it's sort of like, we can act that way and pretend like, you know, I'm this good person and all this bullshit, and fucking, you know, jerk myself off and fucking mental masturbation about all these good aspects of myself that I artificially, you know, over exaggerate, and I can avoid looking at the true aspects of myself. And I can do that all I want. But it doesn't mean anything, because while I may say I'm a good person, my actions won't show it. how I treat other people won't be how someone who values and respects other people treats other people. Do you sort of get it? So like, but if I accept that, let's say, you know, I have an ego, okay, and let's say I have an ego and I'm narcissistic, okay, and I accept that, you know, I'm egotistical and narcissistic. Well, then in every moment when I get the urge or the feeling to do something egotistical and narcissistic, well, I'm going to say to myself, you know, but I could do this. Like, this is the path I want to go on. Like, I don't want to be egotistical and narcissistic. Do you sort of get it? So we have to break it through the action, through changing the direction of the action, but we can only do that. It's sort of like if we're on a road trip, right? And let's say we take a wrong turn. And I ask you, did we take a wrong turn? And you say, no, we're still going the road. And then the sun starts setting and we're actually heading west and we're meant to be heading south. Like, you know what I mean? You can tell me all you want that we're not going, like we're going in the right direction, but I know the truth. Do you sort of get it? Like, we're not going to get to where we want trying to convince ourselves that we haven't made a mistake. So if we're unable to admit the mistake, then we're unable to look at it and address it. And if we're unable to look at it and address it, like, how can we ever change it or alter it? Do you sort of understand? So the only way to be able to change or alter the behaviour is to be able to see it and address it. Like, because if we can't see it and address it, we can't